Welcome, everybody. This is the Chris Fluck Podcast, produced by me, Chris Fluck, and Chris Fiegel. So, a few weeks ago, we met here at the gym, Brick House Strength. Shout out to my gym here in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. And we were going to do our very first episode of a podcast. It's going to be about a book called The Motivation Manifesto by Brendon Burchard. And I was going to use that book, that motivation, to use that as an example of what kind of got me to take that step and actually start a podcast. So we come in here, I got 7 pages of notes typed up, ready to rock and roll, quotes from the book, my opinion on things, back to other quotes from the book. And after 20 minutes, I was like, you know what, let's cut the tape here, man. This is no good. So I spent a few weeks trying to rework that, decided let's do the podcast, episode 1 with Wes. Because that story that he told, that I told, it's pretty important to me because I don't really share a lot of stuff like that with other people. So I thought it'd be a good way to kind of kickstart it and, talk about a pretty tough topic, but yet how you could still overcome. So we get Wes in here. We do episode 1. Now we're on episode 2. We're giving this thing another go, all right? Topic of discussion today is motivation for the most part, all right? And we're going to be looking at this book, Motivation Manifesto by Brendon Burchard, all right? So this book starts out with a great quote. It took me a long time to kind of understand this thing and the importance of this thing, but it goes like this. JFK, you guys should all know that, but it's John F. Kennedy. Conformity is the jailer of freedom and the enemy of growth. So I always felt like conformity is what like growing up is all about. You know, when you're a child, you go to school, you have your friends, you get involved in certain things. Most of the time, you're just trying to be like everybody else. There's always going to be those few kids that kind of do their own thing and don't really care. But for me growing up, I was always trying to fit in, trying to do some of the things that my friends were doing, my brother was doing, some of the older guys were doing, And it was just I just never really felt like it was actually like the true version of myself coming out. So, a lot of the kids were spiking their hair, dressing up, going to school dances, all this other stuff. I never really felt that was something I was interested in. And I'd be like, why would I want to do that? But yeah, you find yourself starting to do some of these things. Then when you get into high school, there's some things where, like what we talked about last week or last podcast, there might be some substance abuse going on, say that you find yourself or find some of your loved ones getting involved with just because they're trying to fit in and trying to conform because they don't really feel true. They don't really feel good about who they are. So they're trying to, give the illusion of something that they really aren't. Found myself doing some of that. Now, after high school, it's like you got to go to college. That's what everybody's telling you. Teachers, guidance counselors, all your friends are going. So you're like, crap, I guess I got to go. Made a decision personally to go to college at Bloomsburg University here in Pennsylvania. No knock on that school, but that environment for me just didn't work. So I go there, my grades are good, then my grades are bad. Grades are good, grades are bad. Most of it was just my environment that I was in, and I had a hard time with the structure or the lack of structure. Played 3 sports my entire life, went to college and decided I'm not going to play sports. And I lost that structure, so I had 20 hours of my day every day to try to figure out what to do because you only have class for a few hours a day. So college was a struggle for me. And I think part of it too was that the only reason I went to college is because I thought that's what I had to do. So it was conformity again. So the next thing, I leave college, I'm a dropout. I decide, I take a year off and I work at this. It's not a real job, but I work at a local university around here, just doing odds and ends, event stuff, set up. Eagles training camp was going on around here, so I'm pounding rebar and getting fences set up, parking cars, running security at some of these tents. And after doing a year of strictly that, I'm like, you know what, I got to get back to school, I think. I changed my major, went into a sport management. At Bloomsburg, I was business management, which is super vague. But I decided, you know what, I really want to get involved in sports again. I started coaching sports. I liked working out. I already had some management classes under my belt, so I decided to go sport management with a focus on health and wellness. So I was able to still take some of these anatomy and physiology courses, kinesiology stuff. So I go back to school. I take a job as a personal trainer at this time. My brother, who we talked about in the first episode, he's coaching wrestling. He gets me involved in coaching wrestling. And around this time, too, I started reading. So I read this book by Tony Dungy. It was called Uncommon, basically. And what it was is that, success is not made for the common individual. success is uncommon. It's a trait. Being uncommon is a trait that you should aspire to be. You don't want to be like everybody else. I almost made that mistake in high school, then in college. I went to take this, when I decided I want to get a good job, man, people are going to think I'm a post office guy or I'm a postal worker. They're going to be like, what, he's got a great government job. But when I went to take that test, it was kind of a turning point for me. I just turned around and went home. I was in the parking lot, drove outside of Philadelphia. That decision right there could have kind of changed the whole trajectory of my life. And it's kind of odd when you think back to this stuff that was probably 10 years ago now. It's like, man, I wonder if I did that, if I would still be doing that. But, I didn't. I decided not to. I decided to do this gym thing. I'm pretty much like I was saying, I'm a quiet guy. I'm an introvert. So when you get into the health and fitness field, it's like, oh, you can't be shy. You can't be quiet and do and motivate people, right? And I was like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to give it a go anyway. So glad I did. But anyway, if I would have listened to everybody else and conformed or try to be like all these other trainers I was working with at the time, if I tried to conform into that wouldn't have been who I was, and I probably wouldn't have been satisfied with the kind of work that I was doing. So, got involved in coaching, like I was saying. That was a game changer. It got me into reading these books. Granted, they were sport books, but it introduced me to a lot of different stuff. And these Tony Dungy books, I recommend them to anybody. But this living that uncommon life was something I still remember to this day, and it kind of just stuck with me. So it's amazing what some books could do to you. So I do want to go back to that Motivation Manifesto book and just get this quote kind of stuck out for me. It was, great men and women don't give a damn if anyone approves. So if I would have cared at any moment in time what anybody said, and if I would have let that to continually affect my decision making, I probably would still be in that awful cycle of switching careers, doing this and that, and never being satisfied with what I was doing. And unfortunately, the masses bound by mediocrity will never approve of anything that breaks convention. So most of the people out there, that they're not willing to take chances in things. So they're gonna always be negative towards you when you're trying to break convention. So if you're not gonna conform, if you're gonna be that oddball that kind of stands out to tries to be a little bit different, most of the people, the masses of people, are gonna think you're crazy. And I'm going to use that to kind of transition into starting this business that I decided to do. So, most people want you to conform, do your own thing. I decided I am going to branch out. I'm going to try to start my own business. And sometimes when you do things like this, it requires a touch of insanity. This is straight from the book. So if taking action before conditions are ideal, if they are reckless, then we must be reckless. So taking these chances sometimes might be a little bit crazy. These people that tell you like, hey, don't do that. You're nuts for doing that. You're nuts for leaving that job. You might be, but when you're trying to make that next step and take a positive action, you might need to do some reckless, crazy behavior every once in a while. So during all this time, I'm coaching. I'm living in Easton, Pennsylvania. I'm driving to Allentown. I'm working 2 jobs, coaching football in Hellertown, Pennsylvania. So if you leave Easton, it's 20 plus minutes to get to Allentown. Allentown to Hellertown is another 20 minutes. Hellertown to Easton is probably another 20 minutes. I found myself at this time driving from Easton to Allentown, sometimes back to Easton, then to Hellertown, then back to Easton, or just doing a big loop around the whole Lehigh Valley here, spending hours a day in a car. Not making a lot of money, but doing some of the things I want to do. So I get a phone call from a guy, and he's like, hey, it's in the summertime, so it's getting kind of late. Wrestling doesn't start till the winter, but usually you want to have your coaches in place as early as possible. They didn't have a junior high coach. I used to coach wrestling. My brother got me involved. I stopped for a few years and was coaching strictly football. They needed a guy. I thought I had some time, plus I didn't know how to say no to any opportunity. So I didn't know how to say no, so I said, of course, yeah, I'll do it. Now, this wrestling program is great. They probably could have plugged anybody in there and would have been really successful because there was a great assistant coach. This guy did a ton of work. So in terms of the technique side of things, in terms of getting these kids to wrestle at a high level, I don't know if there could have been a better assistant coach for me at the time. And then me as the head coach, I was kind of like the overseer, man, making sure that the parents were on board with everything. Kids' grades were good. Making sure, we're keeping things fair, keeping things competitive in the room. But, giving everybody an equal opportunity to succeed, having wrestle-offs, having people fight for a spot in the lineup. That was kind of my job as the head coach. So I knew that they had this great assistant coach in place. I'm like, how hard could this be for me? I take that job. During that season, I meet this guy, Ben. used to coach me in high school. He owns his property. He's involved in a wrestling club in the area, and he's like, hey, man, I got this space. We're doing wrestling instruction in the front. Let's get a gym in the back, all right? So this little square of stuff you see back here, this was just a big open space. This wood floor, it was open wood floor, plaster all over the brick walls. It looked like a mess. It was a wreck, all right? This place, it was ugly. So I spent a year trying to clean this place up. But, we get in here and we start to realize, we're knocking some of this plaster off the wall. We're only going to take off a few sheets. Next thing you know, the whole thing's coming down. So we're like, all right, let's knock it all down. We have to wheelbarrow everything out from the back to the front to the truck because there's no other way that we could do it. We're doing that. We're painting the walls. The walls were this off-white. They were dirty. They were gross. We had to repair walls in the front, plywood, fixing all this other stuff. I mean, it was pretty much a job. So what led me into that was that schedule I was telling you about. And I didn't talk about this before, but 1 year after my brother died, what we talked about in episode 1 year after that was when things started, taking a turn for the worse for me health-wise. I was working out like a madman, but I was also, I guess, just really stressed out. My blood pressure went sky high. So my numbers were 150 over 92, which is like super, just really unhealthy. And I was having these chest pains, so I'm like, I got to go to the doctor. The doctor's like, you know what, you haven't been in over a year. You're a new patient. We're not taking you. That's stressing me out more because now I'm like, am I going to freaking collapse here? I go to an urgent care. They're just like, you just got to relax more. So I made an effort to do that. And while I was trying to make an effort to do that, I realized that I cannot be doing what I'm doing right now. I can't be driving around, getting up at 4 a.m., driving all over the Lehigh Valley. I can't be coaching football 30 plus hours a week in season. I can't be doing the weight room for the football team. I can't be coaching wrestling in the winter. I can't be doing all this stuff, working 3 jobs, who knows, 60 plus hours a week anymore, and still be healthy and get rid of this, these awful chest pains I had. And that's what kind of got me into this situation here where, I just decided I think right now is the best time for me to start a business. All right. I moved down here, totally different area. Big time chance, like I was saying, taking action requires a touch of insanity, like Brendon Burchard says in his book. And I believe that, it was a little bit insane walking into this situation, the condition of the building, but I just kind of said, screw it. And I struggled for a long time in the beginning here. Luckily, the guys that own this space allowed me to fix the place up and kind of operate in here rent free while I was fixing the space up. So as long as I put in some work here, they were cool with with giving me that kind of deal. So, but, getting this business going here has given me the freedom to do all this other cool stuff, like start this podcast, and I get to meet all these awesome people, which is great. So I always say this too, like I had a friend that was scared to start a business, and it's like, you might as well just go in and do it, because you don't want to live the rest of your life regretting the fact that you never did something on your own. And I think it's super important to have control of your life. I mean, I always felt that no matter what it comes down to, it's like you got to feel good about what you're doing as a person, but you also need to have a little freedom and a little bit of autonomy, and you don't want to be under the spell of somebody else. I don't think I could ever work for somebody else again, because for the last, 5 or 6 years, I've been working on my own, and I like having control. I like having, the ability to do a podcast on a Thursday afternoon if I wanted to. I like the fact that I could take off and have somebody cover for me, and I could go spend time with my family. And I don't think I would ever have that if I didn't have the freedom. So that freedom also allows me to spend time, with a support system that I have. And if I didn't have the support system, specifically my girlfriend Marisa, like I don't think I would be in this place right here, right now, being able to do the things I'm doing, because I probably would have given up just based off of where I was at in life. But she thought it was a cool opportunity. She has her own business and was like, you should just do it. And you might have to, I'll help you do the work. And she's awesome. She's super handy. And we put in a lot of work here. And I was just lucky to have that as a support, as somebody that's supporting me. And if I didn't have that, if I had somebody else say in my life that wasn't as supportive, it probably wouldn't have worked out. So like all these pieces are starting to work themselves into place here. I decided, because I can't say no to an event. because I can't say no to an opportunity to coach wrestling. That led me to talk to this man. This man led me to come and find this space. If I didn't have that support system in place, I probably wouldn't have said yes to that man who said I have a space. All of these things are kind of working in unison together around the same time, and it's kind of weird. It's like, once you start to get the balls rolling and you start doing positive things, it seems to like compound and good things just start happening. I don't want to say things happen for a reason and get a little woo-woo on you, because I think we got a little woo-woo-y on that first episode. But you know what? It's kind of weird how things work out and how opportunities come up when you're doing positive things. So we're getting into the support system right now. So a lot of people, they come in here, they're trying to get in the best shape of their life, say. Like, that's kind of the goal. They want to get fit. They want to get healthy. And it's really hard to do that if you don't have that support system. So like I said with the business thing, I had a support system in place that was going to allow me to, they gave me some freedom here and gave me a little bit of wiggle room. They gave me a little support to go out and do this thing. I'm glad I did that, because if I didn't have that, I could be in trouble. When you're talking about a support system at home, and if somebody's always negative, like I had a positive support system, but if somebody's negative and they're always telling you like why you shouldn't do something, why that's a bad idea, I don't know if you should do that, it's going to eventually turn that person, they're going to become fearful, and they're going to be scared to kind of bring up ideas in the future. They're going to become timid. They're going to become weak. They're going to be afraid to even speak their mind sometimes because they're scared of that reaction that they're going to get. So, we don't need to worry about what other people are saying to us. We have total control over who is a part of our support system and how we let that support system affect us. So, we have, our attitude, right? That's number one. There's two reasons, right? Attitude and environment. We control those. Somebody could do an awful thing to me and I could let that ruin my life, or my attitude could be, I'm not going to let that ruin my life. This person could say, you shouldn't do that. You can't do this. Why are you even doing that? Like, that's a stupid thing to do. And it's like, you know what? I could let that change my decision, or I could ignore that person, or I could remove that person from my environment. So how I interpret what they say to me, I'm in control of that. Who's a part of my environment, I'm in control of that too. So it's all about, we choose how we feel, and we choose how we relate to the world, and we choose who's in our world. And sometimes you might feel stuck, which I meet people that feel stuck. I see it all the time where they're trying to change their life and get healthy, but yet their other half, I don't want to throw guys under the bus here, but they might go home and they're dudes eating cheesesteaks and pizza and loving life. And this person says like trying to lose some weight and try to better themselves, but they don't have that support system at home. Or that guy starts working out and then they go home and maybe they've got a big Italian dish waiting, and it's like, wait a second, I'm trying not to eat that, but that person that's in your support system is making this stuff for you. So it's like, how do you tell them, hey, I don't want to eat this anymore, and not like aggravate them and make them mad at the same time? So when you're working with the support system, you either remove them or you got to figure out ways to mold them, get them on board with what you're trying to do. And I think the best way to do that is by start saying us and we more than you'll say I or me. So you don't want it to make this like I'm trying to lose weight. You want to make this like, hey, I want to start eating a little bit better so we could, like I want us to start eating a little bit better, not for weight loss reasons, but just for like health reasons, or me and you should go for a walk, not just I'm going for a walk, and things of that nature. You got to start thinking about it as being a team. If you're not willing to remove that person from your environment because it's a loved one, then you got to start viewing them as a teammate and being in this thing together. And, going back to my coaching days here, and just being involved in athletics from a young age, I think being a teammate is super important. And I think the best way you can be a teammate is kind of taking a role. It's trying to do your best to obviously support that person, but then getting yourself into a leadership position and motivating people to kind of do better for themselves. And, when we go back and we look at this book here, Brendon Burchard, he writes in here, there's been a worldwide failure in leadership. And I see leadership failures at home, I see them at work, and I see them on the playing field. There's failure everywhere. I think we have the wrong definition of what leadership truly is. So let's say I'm coaching sports, and some of the guys I coach with at the time, they might be like that fiery guy, like, let's go. And we need more leaders. We don't have any vocal leaders. And what they're looking for is that person to kick kids in the rear end and get them moving. You can do it. Let's go. Get up that hill. Whatever. To me, that's not what leadership is. That's just being kind of loud and talking. I think leadership comes from actions, and leadership comes from motivating people to do what they need to do for the right reason. So the root word of motivation is motive, and motive is a reason for action. So you have to give somebody a reason for action. I had a conversation yesterday with two people, and we're talking about, the issues. People want to blame kids. People want to blame certain populations of people for problems. Why can't we get these kids to do what they need to be doing? But what they don't do is they don't look at themselves in the mirror and realize that it's their fault. They're not able to motivate them to do what they want to do. It's not the kid's fault. It's just that you haven't been able to figure out a way to get the kid on board, or you haven't been able to figure out a way to get an employee on board, or a client, say that you're working with in the gym, or a member at your gym. If you can't motivate them, it's not their fault. It's your fault for not motivating them to do that. And when we talk about leadership, I think that's the number one lesson. That's like the number one thing is that, if you're a leader, you need to be responsible for your actions, and you need to take ownership in everything that happens. So I used to coach quarterbacks on the high school football team. And if a kid throws an interception, it's like some of them would be like, my bad, my bad, my bad. But all that is words. It's not action, right? So you want that individual to maybe watch the film, see what they did wrong, and then take some actions, take the steps that need to be taken to not let that ever happen again, and learn from that mistake. Obviously, they're going to throw interceptions again, and it's okay to learn from it, and it's okay to take responsibility, but they need to learn from everything, and they need to take the actionable step. They need to take steps that are going to just kind of correct that and never let that occur again. So that is number one here. I'm going to run through about 8 of these things, all right? And the first one is just taking ownership. Like Jocko Willink says, if you watch his podcast or you read the book Extreme Ownership, any failure in leadership is probably your fault, the leader, all right? That's what taking ownership is, and then that's going to be putting the necessary steps in place to kind of fix that. Second thing I want to talk about is being a good teammate, and that's picking people up. It's leading by example. You don't need to be that loudmouth guy giving these huge speeches or these awesome meetings. I think you just lead by example, and you work hard and you outwork everybody. And that's what being a good teammate is. It's being there for people, trying to pick people up and motivating them and being supportive, this whole support system thing coming back. Just being there for them and having their back when you need it. The third thing I want to talk about is believing in yourself, believing in the team, and believing in the goals. If you don't believe you have the ability to do what you're supposed to do, your teammates are going to see that. So if you're in a leadership position and you're like, man, I don't know if I could make this happen, everybody's going to sense that. They're going to see it. They're going to feel it, and it's going to affect productivity. Let's say your team has goals. If you don't believe in those team goals, and you're supposed to be a leader, everybody's going to know that. Everybody's going to see that. They're not going to believe in those goals either if you don't, and you're the leader. And then lastly are the goals. We need to set obtainable goals. We need to set goals that we can believe in, and we want to set goals in so that when we do believe in them, our teammates could see us believing in them and kind of just get behind it, man, and just kind of feel motivated and do it, all right? So that's that. Now, the fourth thing I want to say is that just to keep your ego in check. All right, as a leader, we might have a big ego, and we don't want that. That's not what being a true leader is all about. So you got to, you got to put the team first. You cannot be like, you know what, I'm the man here, I'm the leader, this is not my fault. These guys screwed up. Take a look in the mirror. It's probably on you. It's probably something you did. You didn't tell them to do the right thing. You didn't motivate them to do the right thing. You're not above them. You're part of them, all right? It is your team. It is your unit. The fifth thing I want to talk about, we want to keep things simple. When you're setting these goals up, if I'm in the gym and I'm supposed to motivate people and be a leader in here, and I'm trying to teach somebody how to do a squat, I'm not going to talk about knee flexion, hip flexion, externally rotating this or abducting that. I'm just going to tell them that, hey, let's keep your chest up. Let's try to drop down, elbows inside the knees, and then come on up. Like that's how we're going to communicate here. We want to keep it simple so that these people could look at me as a leader and be like, you know what? I could get behind that. I'm not confused. That's clear. That was concise. And it was simple instruction that hopefully they could do. All right. Now the sixth thing here, prioritize and execute. Stolen again from Jocko. All right. So we're making a list. We got 10 things to do. We got to prioritize what's important, and we got to start checking the boxes, knocking them off from the top. All right. Prioritize put the steps in order to execute what we need to execute, and then make it happen. Knock it off the list, work your way down. One of the best ways we can do that is the next point here is to delegate. Say I'm a gym owner. I can't do everything in here. Eventually, I'm going to need a man like I got here with Chris Fiegel to help me out, record video, edit things. I can't do that. Well, I can maybe, but I don't know how to do it, all right? I'm better off training people in here. Should I be cleaning the gym floor? Should I be painting the wall? Should I be doing this, that, and the other thing? Eventually, you run out of hours in a day. You need to delegate, and you need to trust those that you do delegate things to make things happen. And it's your job as a leader that if that individual doesn't do what you want them to do, you got to kind of motivate them to do what you want and get them on board with what you're doing instead of just complaining about it. All right. Next thing, we're talking about discipline. As a leader, you got to be disciplined. If you're not disciplined, your teammate's not going to be disciplined. That's simple. All right. That is very, very basic. If you're a coach and you're telling somebody, hey, you need to be on time or you're going to be running 10 hills, but then you show up 3 minutes late every day, that's not gonna fly. And you're just giving them a poor example. So when we talk about being a leader, we need to be disciplined. All right. We need to learn how to delegate. We need to prioritize and execute. We need to keep things simple and communicate clearly. All right. That's what communication's all about, is keeping things simple. All right. We need to keep our ego in check. We need to believe in ourselves. We need to believe in the team, and we need to believe in the goals that we have set. We need to be a good teammate. And lastly, extreme ownership, man. We need to be responsible for our actions. All right. That's what it is. My opinion, it's not the rah-rah, give the big speech thing to get the team motivated. It's those key points there. There's probably more that I missed, but honestly, I feel like if you could follow those things, you're going to be good to go. All right. Now, in order to lead, also feel that you need to be of a good state of mind and in good spirits mentally, and also in good health physically. So one of the things that I started doing about 2 or 3 weeks ago to get my mind right, so to speak, was I wanted to get rid of some of the negativity in life. Obviously, each individual has their own life and their own thing going on here. So we could only handle so much as a human being, I feel like. And I think that if we start reading the news and we start reading all these other headlines and all these clickbait things of terrible things that are going on in the world, it's going to directly affect us in how we're doing personally. So, let's say you read that article, sometimes these news headlines are super catchy and they trigger some of these things, cortisol gets triggered. You're in a chronic state of stress. Let's say you chill out, then you're going back to the news 3 hours later and you see another story, another bombing, another school shooting, another mall shooting, a bridge just collapsed. All right. 2 people died because a bridge collapsed. So obviously you feel for that family, but the news outlet makes it about the people. So they elicit a certain emotion and a certain response, when the story really should be about that bridge, that structure of that bridge having issues, and why nobody knew that bridge was structurally not sound. Like, to me, that's what the story should be about, because how many other bridges in this country might be that bad? It should be about the infrastructure. It should be, why aren't there systems in place to kind of fix this, to prevent things from happening, But instead we focus on the death that happened from it, who's responsible for it, stuff of that nature. And all that stuff, man, it does elicit a response, and it inhibits, our way of kind of, being as productive as we can be. So we have these clickbait, issues. We get on the news and we start clicking different things. So the more we're on the news, the more we're reading these headlines, the more we're clicking, the less, comprehension we get from everything. And I remember coming across a study from 2001 that was like, the more hyperlinks that they put in an article, the less comprehension that people had reading those articles. So when you get your news app and all of these things are condensed in there, you're just clicking, boom, boom, boom. Next thing you know, you're reading about the school shootings, all this other crap going on in the world. And at the end of it, you're like, somebody's like, oh, what did you just read? You're like, you don't really know. You're just clicking, reading headlines. I do it all the time. Then I feel like I'm lying to somebody. They're like, oh, what were you doing? No, I was just checking the news. And like, oh, what were you reading? You're like, I don't know. Like, I don't even know what the heck I just did for the last 10 minutes. But you're wasting time. That's what you're doing. So one thing I just decided, man, 3 weeks ago, I read this article, Rolf Dobelli. He just said, he had this thing in this paper, did we spend the vast majority of the day doing meaningful activities rather than being slave to distraction or useless endeavor? To me, reading these clickbait news headlines, I think they fall under distraction and useless endeavor. The news and 3 things that the news could do to us, man, it's going to we're going to obviously spend time consuming it. That's number one. So that's wasting time that we could be doing productive things. Second thing, the time it takes to refocus. So if I'm doing a task and I'm like, yeah, I'll just check the news quick. Now I'm focusing on that. Now I have to get back on task. That's going to take, who knows, another 10 to 15 minutes before I get back in the groove of that job I was doing. Then you do that 3 to 5 times a day. You're wasting like an hour of your day. And then the third thing is, like I was saying, with the whole stress situation, these stories linger in our minds. There's some stories that I read that I'm still like, you still think about some days and you're just like, how the heck did that happen? And it really affects you on a personal level. And I think it affects your long-term health. So my advice on that front, get rid of the news for a little bit, pick up a book, pick up a well-thought-out journal, and a thoughtful journal. Start reading some positive things maybe. And if you need to get the news, maybe you do it on the weekend for like an hour. So in order to help get the mind right, that was one thing that I did. And I think that it did help kind of like remove some stress from my life. And, the next part here, going back to the book, our well-being has been cast aside for wealth, and success has been, valued more than our sanity. So, what people want to work and they want to rationalize what they do every day by the amount of money, the amount of success they have. They put this stuff on Instagram, they put it on Facebook, and it looks like this person is living a lavish lifestyle or they have the most successful job. But what you don't see is those dark times. So like that individual might go home and be depressed every night, but they're not putting that online. They're putting those vacations. They're at the beach. They're out drinking with buddies. That's the only stuff that you see. So same with the job stuff. They want to talk about how many sales they had, how many clients they had, how maybe their member did that. But they're valuing all that stuff as opposed to valuing their health. So I think that's an issue. And when we take a look around, we have an abundance of wealth and food and drink, an abundance of jobs. A lot of people are working right now, but what we don't have is an abundance of health and happiness. And I think if we kind of rework our structure here and, going back to one of those leadership principles, if our priorities are a little bit backwards. So if we're able to kind of rework what is important to us, maybe we will be healthier, maybe we will be happier if we kind of, value the things that we should value. And like, going back to the book, our bodies were not designed for the atrophy of a sedentary lifestyle. Most people feel guilty for destroying someone else's property, yet they wreck their most prized possession, which is their human body. I don't get how people could care more about a vehicle, what they put in their car, than what they put in their body. And you know what? It's like, people say YOLO, you only live once, right? And I get that for sure, but I want to live. I want to feel good, and I want to live long. And each year I live, I want to get better. I don't want to be 30 years old and be like, I wish I was 30 again. I want 40 to be better than 30. I want 50 to be better than 40, 60 to be great. I want to feel good as I get older. And it's not about how much money I make and how much money I can leave for somebody. I want to be able to enjoy life for the rest of my life. And I think the only way to do that is to get up, get moving, and take care of your body. Now, we could do some of these things. We could go work out in the morning, but if we spend most of our time sitting around watching television or sitting in an office, it pretty much is going to negate everything that we did. So when we're talking about improving our health mentally, my advice, give up the news for a little bit and see what that does for you. And from the physical side of things, in the Northeast here, we're starting to hit winter. So it's going to be hard to get your vitamin D in, but let's say it's nice out, get out and get some sunlight. And if you can't get some sunlight, maybe you want to supplement a little vitamin D just to make sure this seasonal depression stuff doesn't hit us pretty good. So second thing I think you should do physically is don't sit around. Get up and get moving. You could work out for 40 minutes every morning, but if you're going to sit for 9+ hours, it's going to negate everything that you did that morning. And you're not going to be able to get rid of that nagging back pain because you're sitting on your butt all day. All right? So get some sun, get up, get moving. Sleep is the third thing that we could control now. I got scared listening to this podcast with Joe Rogan with this guy. I think his name was Matthew Walker. He said we need 7 to 9 hours of sleep. And if not, our cognitive ability starts to, there's a whole slew of things that happen. And one of the examples they used was kids, making kids get up for school super early. One county, I forget the state that they were in, they pushed the start time back like an hour and a half. And Teenage car accidents decreased by 70% just by pushing the start time. It was something crazy like that. It's like people need to sleep. People don't function right when they're not getting rest. So one of the things that you need to do to get more sleep is you need to try different ways to kind of down regulate at nighttime. For me personally, I'm getting zinc. I'm getting magnesium. I'm taking some of that. I'm getting some sleepy time, caramel soothing bedtime tea. I'm drinking tea and I'm taking a hot shower and I'm unwinding and I'm trying to read before bed. I'm not watching television shows that get me all jacked up. I'm not watching football games, anything like that. I just put a value on my health, and one way to do that is by sleeping better. So find a routine that works for you, but we need to get better sleep. And if we get better sleep, I think it's gonna help us out the next day. I was just talking to my buddy today. Sometimes he only gets 4 hours of sleep. He works with EMS and he's a police officer. And on those days when he works, he eats like crap because he's not getting the necessary amount of sleep. So his hormones are all messed up, and he's snacking all the time. Then when you're snacking more, you kind of crave what you consume. So if you're consuming carbohydrates, you're going to crave more carbohydrates, and it's just a terrible, terrible thing. So, in order for us to get healthy, we need to take care of our minds, and we need to get our minds right. We need to get in a good state. Support system plays a role in that. Being around good, positive people, eliminating the negativity, because what we consume, it kind of becomes who we are. If we're reading all of these petty little stories about conflict in the world, then those stories kind of become a part of who we are. And that little pettiness might resonate with us. And that's just stuff we have to get rid of. And then physically, just get moving more, take care of your bodies, make it a priority to sleep better. And I'm hoping if you could do that, it's going to kickstart, just be those little things that are going to kick into more healthier habits where you might start eating better and all that. So that's all I got here for today, guys. Now, last week we did episode 1, and Chris here, he did an incredible job. Now this podcast is available on all kinds of different outlets. So, let's say you have an Apple phone. It doesn't matter. You can find it on Stitcher. You can find it on Spotify. You could get it on Google Play. You could go to chrisfluckpodcast.com. You could go to YouTube, search Chris Fluck. It's going to come up there. Also, you could go to Patreon, which is a pretty cool site. So on Patreon, basically what we have going on there is you could come and you could support what we're doing here. And pretty much, there's an option that you could become a patron and you could support what we're doing by pledging, say, $1, $5, $10 to kind of become a member. And all the money is just going into all the projects that we're doing here. Eventually, we're going to use this money for production stuff. We're going to use it for like webinars, more like clinic stuff, more longer content pieces. But we do need your help here. So if you're supporting and you like what we're doing, you could go to patreon.com. You could search Chris Fluck. I think it's /Chris Fluck. And you can kind of support us. Now, just so you're going to get something in return, so we're not just asking for money. We got some t-shirts coming. We can hook you up with a Brick House Strength t-shirt, which is my gym here in Pennsylvania, or a Chris Fluck Podcast t-shirt, which are they're pretty much going to be in production next week. We'll get a picture of those out there too. So basically, if you could support what we're doing on Patreon, become a patron. Some of that money is going to go towards our production stuff, and just so we can put out better products each and every time. And we'll hook you up with some t-shirts, and you're going to get access to some of the content that we do put out that is only going to be available for you, the patron. So, that's all we got here for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this one. Check out the book, The Motivation Manifesto by Brendon Burchard. I want to thank everybody that listened to episode 1. I'm hoping you're still listening after this episode here, and we got many more to come, guys. Hope you have a great day. Peace, everybody.